Mr. President, I come to the floor this afternoon to mark a milestone that no senator can be proud of, a milestone that every senator should regret. That milestone is it has now been 100 days since the Congress failed to extend full funding for the Children's Health Insurance Program. And the Congress has always looked at this in a bipartisan way. This is for the millions of families where kids walk an economic tightrope and their families, the families that balance the rent bill against the fuel bill and the fuel bill against the grocery bill. Mr. President, I have to say that there was plenty of time in the last Congress to carry out the priorities of the multinational corporations, the people who are well-connected, the people who are powerful. They got permanent, substantial, really massive new tax breaks, and yet the 9 million kids, including 80,000 in my home state, who count on CHIP to stay healthy, what they got was a patch. They got something temporary. They got something that didn't resemble the permanent, you can count on it, tax relief that the multinational corporations were celebrating at the end of the year. A sad statement about the priorities of the Congress at the end of last year, and one that I hope we will move now in the bipartisan tradition of this Congress, in the bipartisan tradition, of this program, to pass on a permanent basis. The CHIP program was created in 1997 through a simple idea. No child, regardless of their income, family status, or geography, should go without quality, affordable health care. It serves families who make too much to qualify for Medicaid, but also don't have access to affordable health care through their employer. And a lot of these families go back and forth between CHIP and Medicaid, depending on whether a spouse is out of work. CHIP covers all kinds of essential health care for kids, from preventive services to dental checkups to treatment for serious illnesses. For families across the country, that's peace of mind. That's the chance to go to bed at night knowing that you aren't going to get crushed by big medical bills in the morning. It means you don't have to have those heartbreaking, right before bed conversations about what you're going to do for your sick child. And it doesn't mean that you have to just plan on the unexpected emergencies with nowhere to turn. All of that is at risk because of the negligence of this Congress. And I use that word specifically, Mr. President. I talked about the skewed priorities at the end of the year, but right now, states are stretching their children's health insurance program dollars to the breaking point. They're trying to make sure kids stay covered. And what we're faced with is termination notices going out. We've got to prevent those termination notices for these families. And as I said, Congress put a patch on all this, contrasting this to the permanent relief of the multinationals. And the Congress sent a small amount of money to the states to keep them afloat. But make no mistake about it, Mr. President, it is not going to be long before bedlam sets in once again, and there are real consequences for children and families. Now, I also want to note, Mr. President, that I've been working closely with Chairman Hatch for months now to get CHIP across the finish line. Chairman Hatch knows what it takes. He created this program. Our friend, Senator Rockefeller, the late, great Senator Kennedy, they demonstrated that kids' health was an issue that transcends ideological lines, and our country is the better for it today. Chairman Hatch and I made an agreement in September that extends full funding for 5 years, affirms key protections for kids and their families, and gives states certainty they count on to plan their budgets. I note that the leader, Senator Schumer, is here, who's been very supportive of this bill, sat next to me for years, sat by Senator Rockefeller and myself, being supportive of the Children's Health Program. And our bill passed, the Hatch-Wyden bill passed with a strong bipartisan vote in the Finance Committee, but again, highlighting the priorities. Where there was time for the multinational corporations to get that permanent relief, there wasn't any time to put the CHIP bill, one that had only one vote in opposition in the Finance Committee on the Senate floor. And the House of Representatives, they weren't pursuing it like we did in the Finance Committee. They never could get past a purely partisan approach out of line with CHIP's long bipartisan history. Now, obviously, after months of delay, it's time to act. And I want to wrap up with just a quick comment about what's going to happen if you don't move and move quickly. Just last week, the Congressional Budget Office announced that the cost of CHIP is plummeted from $8.2 billion to just $800 million. That's because premiums in the individual market are set to skyrocket after the repeal of the Affordable Care Act's coverage requirement in the Republican tax bill. Many of the families who currently count on CHIP will have to get their kids' health care on the private market at a higher cost. As if Congress needed more reasons to act, the Budget Office has demonstrated what is now at stake for kids and their families who are counting on quick action for affordable health care. Mr. President, there is a long history, as I've noted, of the Senate working on the Children's Health Insurance Program in a bipartisan way. We started building on that tradition in the Finance Committee with virtual unanimity. But somehow, at the end of the last Congress, and your priorities can always be illustrated on what you find time to do. There was time at the end of the year for the agenda of the multinational corporations. There wasn't time for the youngsters and their families who walk an economic tightrope and depend every night when they turn the lights out on making sure there's a way to pay for health care if there's an emergency in the morning. I want it understood that we are working day in and day out now to make sure that quickly, kids and their families get the certainty and predictability they deserve. They deserve the kind of certainty that the powerful got with the tax bill at the end of the year. So, Mr. President, we're going to be on this floor until this critical legislation is passed. It needs to be passed quickly. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor.